Okay, so there's a lyric in that song that I'm going to start with that I just absolutely love, and it's this. I'm fully loaded and equipped to see God's got her fingerprints all over me. So are you fully loaded?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, who has said that? So Liz is the only one in this room who's fully loaded. What did you drink? No, the understanding, I am full of who I am. I am absolutely certain of who I am, and I am equipped. I am ready to live my life out loud. How many people are there?
Yeah. Yes.
How many people want to be there? How many people are going there? Right? So I'm fully loaded and equipped to see that God's got her fingerprints all over me. And another line I loved was, I might be a real rule breaker. You know, I like that one. I might be a real rule breaker, but I've been pressed out by my maker. Now, we don't really deal with life in terms of saying my maker, you know, my as though God made me. But something is constantly making everything, right? So that something that is making everything is who I am. I am that something that is making everything. So I am the maker of my life, certainly, and every life that works around me. So this idea of being a rule breaker is kind of where I want to go today. And the individuality of fingerprints, the individuality that each one of us has. Because this month is all about adventure, right? So, but it's about adventure, and I love, Julio set me up so perfectly. It's about adventure, but it's not about an adventure. It's about the atmosphere of the consciousness of adventure, the lifestyle of adventure. How many people would say that their lifestyle is adventurous? Good. Every hand should go up. Mindy, what'd you say? It's not. But you want it to be, right? Yes, good. So, and it's good if you know you're not, if that's not been my lifestyle. My lifestyle is, some people's lifestyle is to get through life. Some people are here to just hanging in there. And you know what I say to people when I say, how you doing? Hanging in there, I say, let go. Let go. You gotta. Because it's not gonna work if you're just hanging on, hanging in there. You have to be willing to have this adventurous nature. Your fingerprints, everybody knows, right, that your fingerprints are the only fingerprints in the universe. One set. Glenda has one set of fingerprints, and there's no set of fingerprints alike. Isn't that bizarre, though? If you really think about it, it shows the infinity of life. There's never two of anything. It's just constantly one, moving, expanding. So if you have fingerprints unlike anybody else, why would you want a life like anybody else? Why would you try to have a life like anybody else? And here's the thing. I know you're all here, so most of you are here because you are in this philosophy. And what this philosophy teaches us is that we are the individualization of God. That we are the individualized expression of this energy field, this quantum field of creativity. Individualized. So then why, if we are the individualization of an infinite power, would we try to be like anybody else? Why? It really doesn't make sense. And I believe that trying to fit in, to be like everybody else, causes a lot of the tension, causes a lot of the stress, and a lot of the negative aspects of consciousness that holds us back. And that's what I want to talk about today. So the title of my talk is, Whose Adventure Is It Anyway? Now, do you all remember the Broadway show? I'm sure you do. Whose Life Is It Anyway? It was an amazing Broadway show. I think it won the Pulitzer, definitely won the Tony. And it was about someone they were keeping alive and didn't want to be alive anymore and was fighting for the right to end that person's life. So this title is sort of a take on that. Do we have the right to have the adventure that we want to have? Yes, we do. But are you doing it? Are you taking it? So whose adventure is it anyway? Whose life are you living right now? I know you're going to say you're living your life, but are you living maybe your younger version of yourself's life? meaning somewhere along the line you thought this is what you should be doing by now, so you're still living that dream or that aspiration or that design? How many people are still living, you don't have to raise your hands, how many people are still living designs that were designed way back here when perhaps I had a different version of life? Are we willing to stay fluid, to stay open to stay in the atmosphere of permission, giving ourselves permission to have whatever adventure we decide we want to have? She has a line in the song that says, I can't get there if I have to go your way. Does anybody feel that way sometimes? I can't get there if I do it your way. And how often in your life are you being asked to do it a certain way? And it's difficult sometimes when you don't see it that way. Even in education, children learn in many different styles. Some people learn by what they see, some people learn by what they hear, some people auditory, so many different versions. And yet, when I was growing up, those nuns in those Catholic schools, there was one way you were going to be taught. And if you don't get it, sit in the back. And I have a really funny story. So there was a day, and in geography class, Sister Mary Margaret and I could not find Africa on the map. And the more, it's pretty big too, and the more she tried to get me to find it, the harder it was to see anything. And I ended up having to kneel in front of the map for the rest of the class because I couldn't find Africa. And then you can't find Africa because you're crying. And your tears, are you feeling sorry for me right now? Liza went, nope. I had Sister Michael Margaret too. So yeah. But people try so hard to get you to do it the way they would do it, which is not necessarily mean, because people that know how to do something tell you to do it their way because they're pretty sure it'll work. But it won't work if Stan does it my way. Right, Stan? No way. Let's not be too adamant about that. So the real question is, are you doing things your own way? And you know what? Are you taking the risk? This is Adventure Month. Are you willing to take the risk to do it your way? How many times? So many times with Kevin. Kevin is a front seat driver. When he's sitting in the passenger seat, he very often tells me what I should do, how I should drive, where I should park. Right? And just yesterday.
How to do it better. Yeah. There you go.
So yesterday, I saw this great parking place. He goes, no, James, there's tons down there. But there was this great parking place. And I drove down there, and then I was like, why do I do that? Why do I even listen to you when I know that was the better parking space, which he agreed to. He went, no, you were right. But very often I acquiesce, not just to Kevin, because that's very seldom, but I acquiesce to the world or to what. I remember when Dr. Walker said to me, if you're going to be a minister, you got to give up all this play stuff. And I was like, he said, you can't be an actor anymore. You just be a minister. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. That just doesn't seem right. And he said, that's how it works. Because he did that. Dr. Walker gave up his lucrative career as a singer. He was an amazing singer. And he never sang at church, ever. Because he was a minister. He's not a singer anymore. That's how he did it successfully. That would kill me. That would not work for me. But I know that. So what did I do? I bought a theater to open a church in, just to piss him off. And it worked well. And I love this too, the other line that Margaret has in this song. My own compass works just fine. Let's all say that. My own compass works just fine. How's that feel? Yeah. Right? So instead of everybody telling me, my own compass works just fine. And I always say, even if I get lost, and I have been known to get lost, driving or walking for that matter. In fact, I'm going to see how I do on the ship this time, because you all remember the story where Kevin just stopped because I was leading, and I just kept walking till I hit a dead end. And I turn around, and he's at the other end of the corridor laughing hysterically because it was a dead end. But I wouldn't have seen all the pictures on the people's doors if I'd not gone down a dead-end road. So I always say, you are always unfolding perfectly no matter what. so my compass works just fine. And let's add a little no matter what to that. Does that work? Okay. So for me, the big thing is this. Your adventure is your adventure. Scott, your adventure is not Marilyn's adventure. And Marilyn's adventure is not your adventure. And yet you can take a vacation together and have different adventures. How many husband and wives here, or boyfriends and girlfriends, or anybody that goes with couple anywhere, perhaps you're in the middle of a vacation and you'd actually like to do something different than the group is doing that day. Anybody have that experience? What do you do most of the time? Go along with the group. Yeah. And if you don't, because your partner may be saying, you have to go, this is what I want to do. Compromise. You're just living our whole marriage here in front of you today. Compromise is important in relationships. But if you're compromising your own desires with yourself, that doesn't work. Do y'all hear that? Yes, I compromise and Kevin compromises. But we don't compromise our dreams. I mean, I remember when we bought the house here, we finally decided, we moved to California because I wanted to move to California. Instantly, Kevin got Lion King on Broadway. The universe knows what it's doing at all times. The only way he could have gotten Lion King is if he had moved to Los Angeles, because then they knew he was in LA when they needed someone, and they said, well, Kevin Bailey's in LA, let's see if he'll work. And he got the job. Back to New York for 4 years. 2 years of Lion King and 2 years of Annie Get Your Gun. Right? So the universe knows exactly what it's doing, but you have to know it's your adventure no matter what. So how many of you feel perhaps you may be living an adventure that's not really yours? You don't have to raise your hand, but that's not really your adventure. It's someone else's, or an idea of what you thought your adventure would be. What if you had right now in this moment an opportunity to just look at a list of things and pick any one of them, they would come true? You'd get to live that adventure no matter what, whatever it is. And what if your heart had the capacity to throw all of those desires onto a sheet so that you could see them all clearly and said to you, whichever one, or as Karen likes to say, as Brad likes to say to Karen, as you wish. Whatever you want. You see, we're part of a philosophy that tells us that's how it works. Decide what you want, back it up with belief, and then live it. It's that simple. But you know what you have to do first? Decide what you want. And most of our decisions come from beliefs that sometimes sabotage what we think we want. So, here's the thing about your adventure being your adventure. Nobody has to understand it. Nobody has to agree with it. You don't need to gain approval from anybody about whatever adventure you want to take. I love that Margaret and Eric are picking up and moving to New York City. I guarantee you, Eric, have a lot of people had kind of negative reactions to this?
Not a lot, no.
Well, you have good friends. But usually when...
Face, anyway.
To your face. Oh, let me tell you then, lots of negativity that I hear. No, but very often when we say, I want to do this, people will, in the nicest way, tell you why you shouldn't. Has anybody had that experience? Yeah, where people will say why you shouldn't do this. And nobody needs to understand it. There's this great quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he says this. Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and ever pure and wise spirit, Galileo, that ever took flesh. And then he said this, to be great is to be misunderstood. So the adventure that you have inside of you is also linked to the greatness that you have inside of you. Greatness produces amazing adventure. The greatness that you are connected to what you are to do in life, who you are to be, now you have it. To be great is to be misunderstood, because many people around you will very often say, what the hell are you doing? I remember when I said I was going to be a minister. And Kevin said, what are you doing? And then when I said I wanted to open a church, It was like, why would you give up your career? You just got signed to the biggest agency in Los Angeles, and you want to suddenly turn all out. People thought I was crazy. My father thought I was insane. He was like, why would you give up a very successful career as an actor, and now you're writing and directing, and you're going to be a minister? To do what? It's a lot, just so, to do what? So what I'm asking you today to look at is, what's inside of you? We picked these themes, adventure. What is inside of you that maybe you're not letting out? What adventure is there for you that maybe you're living because it's just the adventure you're used to? And like Julio said this morning, I'm not talking about the adventures out here to do. I'm talking about something inside of you that is bubbling up. To be great is to be misunderstood. So Ernest Holmes said this. Oops, let me go back. Oops. Oh, so let's do my talk from the beginning. The title of my talk today, oh wait, what's going on, Thor? Oh wait, let me go back. Got it. I went the wrong way. There it is, that was it. It is a great adventure to make conscious use of the law. Well, just give some thought to that. This is a really intense, beautiful quote. It is a great adventure to make conscious use of the law. And this I love. This is Oscar Wilde. An optimist will tell you the glass is half full, the pessimist half empty, and the engineer will tell you the glass is twice the size it needs to be. So how does that relate? Quite simply, half full, half empty, all that talks about, all that shows is who you are as a person, what you have become, what your philosophy is, what your beliefs are. If you're somebody that sees everything constantly as half empty, you've just grown up to be that person. That's the personality that Troward talks about. Thomas Troward talks about the personality is our use of this creative process, and we create who we are. So half-empty person. Anybody here a half-empty person? Like you're going to raise your hand. Everybody else is half full. Okay, good. But we don't need to be either because it's judgmental. It's a judgment, right? It's what?
It's refillable.
Refillable. I'm a half-empty person, but I constantly bring water with me. Right. No, but I love what it says here. The engineer will tell you the glass is twice the size it needs to be. The scientist in you, were you to really lean into the science part of science of mind and really understand this teaching, you would never be half full or half empty. You would know exactly who you were. I was working with someone this week, and I said to them, you know this teaching. You absolutely know it, but you don't go to it as a first go-to. It's your second or third or last resort. That's one of our big problems. If we don't use this teaching as the first thing we go to, something happens, since today's Nora's birthday, when Nora passed, when she was in the accident, the first thing that went into my mind, first thing that came to me was the Emma Curtis Hopkins quote, which now has left my mind. There is no, it's this. There is only God. Oh my God. Well, I don't need it. There's only one life. That is God's life. That is Nora's life now. That's what came to me instantly. Instantly. I said it all night. All night. Thank you, Mindy. There is but one life. That life is God's life. That life is Nora's life now. Now notice what that wasn't saying was, save my daughter. That was not my go-to. My go-to was, I understand life. I understand that whatever's going to happen is going to happen for her highest and best. And now I'm just going to take this journey, this adventure. And it's about to be 5 years coming up on that. So that's what Oscar Wilde's actually saying. That's the idea. Can you live this teaching? Can you live this science so clearly that your go-to is this science? We play around with reality all the time, but there is a science. If you take judgment out of the equation, if you really take judgment out of the equation, if you take good and bad out of the equation, and you live from a rather impersonal, yet exciting and passionate life, kind of like, I almost said his name, that guy who was so excited about the tap water. And what he really meant was that New York City supposedly had the best tap water. You could drink your tap water. I don't know if that's still the case 20, 30 years later. But to live that kind of life where everything's exciting, everything's good, everything's possible, even sadness, even something that comes up that's disappointing, you know there's a reason for it. Isn't that what we teach, Dan? We teach that when something comes along that may even give you a major hiccup, we're like, but I know there is good here. I know there is good here. Something good comes from this. That's the teaching. So when Ernest Holmes says using the law is the greatest adventure there is, that's what he's talking about. Using the law. Using inside of you, Hannah, is an understanding, a knowing that my life is unfolding perfectly no matter what. And that's how this goes. So, I have a question for you to think about for a minute. What makes your life your life? Just give it a thought for a moment. What makes your life your life? What have you done with your fingerprints? With your individuality? What makes Lee, Lee? What makes Julio, Julio, Karen, Karen? What makes each one of us who we are? What makes my life, and not Scott Gibbs' life? Do you know the answer? Anybody have an answer to that? Choices. That's the exact answer. Who said that? There you go, Glenda. Choices. That's it. We all start out as this infinite, gorgeous, beautiful, passionate, wonderful energy. Then we make choices. And little by little, we change and change and change. I have a relative who's been very angry her whole life. And she's at the end of her life right now. And I just showed my son a picture of her that I took. And he was like, oh my God. And I didn't say this to him, but for me, people represent what they're doing with their minds, their consciousness. So if we want to ask ourselves, what makes my life, it's the choices I've made. Not just the wisdom I know, not just the science I've understood, but the choices I've made because of that. So everyone in this room, for the most part, understands this philosophy. It is done unto you as you believe. So you must get in there and figure out, what do I believe? What makes my life, what makes Dr. Liza's life her life? And when you're looking at Liza's life from the outside in, you see a very adventurous woman. I never know where she is in this world. She's always traveling somewhere, doing something crazy, right? Same thing with Dr. Eric. Constant. I never know what state he's in or what country he's in or what house he's in. Because there is an adventurous side to them. There is that. So what makes you, Sherry Verson? These are not questions for the faint of heart, because it really does benefit us to ask that question and ask ourselves, what choices have I been making? And what choices do I want to make going forward? So as I said, the title of my talk is, Whose Adventure Is It Anyway? That question, what makes you, you? What makes your life, is a question I'd like you to play with for the rest of this month. What does make me who I am? And the answer is your choices, but then just take a look at your choices. How many of you have choices you're in the middle of making right now? Anybody? Okay, yeah, I have a number of them. So what will it be? How will you make those choices? Are you going to make those choices based on the facts? Are you going to make those choices based on the past? Are you going to make those choices based on intuition? Or are you going to make those choices based on all of the above? And before you make the choice, tap in. Really tap in. Because there's already an answer. It's already there. It's already right there. So, whose adventure is it anyway? It's your adventure to live out loud, fully, unabashedly, with no qualification and no having to answer to anybody else. Your adventure, Glenda, is your adventure, right? And you get to live it. And I would like to say that this adventure is perhaps one that you haven't really experienced yet. And I'm not talking about you haven't been to China. Something else. It's getting very emotional for me. When Ernest Holmes said that, the greatest adventure is the use of the law. There are desires inside of you that you are ready to fulfill. And there is a law that is ready to play Brad Kiefer in your life and say, as you wish. That's who we are. What does it take to pull up that desire and apply the law and live that thing? What does it take? That's what I want you to find this week, this month, for the rest of this month. Because many of us are on our way to Alaska, to an adventure. And that adventure is going to be amazing. But I want to know this for myself. I've been to Alaska, 6 times now, maybe 5, 6 times. I want to find more of me in this trip. I want every one of us to find more of ourselves as we move through this trip. Whose adventure is it anyway? It's my adventure, and I get to live it my way, and it's your adventure, and you get to live it your way, because we live in a universe where everything is possible, everything is probable, and all it takes is a resounding yes from you. So let's hear it. And yes! And so it is.